could you share with them the story about the church?
Yes. Okay. Yes. Last summer I was working with 3 churches in Saltillo, one we call Philadelphia, and at that church there was a large work group from the United States. So my primary work there was with the Church in the United States that was down there working. Another church was Buen Samaritano. Actually, there were 3. Another was Ebenezer. At Buen Samaritano and Ebenezer, I was working with the church. There were not Americans there. I was working with the church leadership. At Philadelphia, the U.S. group was there. And Buen Samaritano, there wasn't a group there at the time, but there had been groups there that summer. There had been groups there the years before. And same with Philadelphia. There was a group there I was working with. There had already been groups there that summer. There had been groups there for years prior. And at Philadelphia, there was a young woman who her house shared a wall with the church. And you'll find that things are right next to each other. People share walls of homes or their fences, their gates, their cinder block walls will share in common. And so we were out in the neighborhood and talking to people on the streets and everything. And one day there was nobody that signed up to train with us. So myself and a couple of the translators working with me were like, let's just go out and talk to the people. And we don't have the pressure of teaching someone. We can just talk. And so I'm, kind of cruising across the street, and I turn over my shoulder and I see this woman doing her laundry, and I'm like, I wonder if anyone's talked to her. I was like, there've been people all summer long, and there've been people here all week long. So we're just gonna go and kind of check things out there, with assuming that someone's talked to her, and we just kind of say hi and move on somewhere else. No one talked to her, not that summer, and she was fairly new to the neighborhood, so I don't think she was there the year before. But she had a 2-year-old. She was probably 20 years old. She didn't know anyone in that neighborhood. She was new to the area. Her family was on the other side of Saltillo. She didn't get to see them. She didn't have transportation. She had just had a miscarriage 2 weeks prior. And so we talked to this woman, and very open. And she wasn't afraid of, but 2 of us were Americans. We had a Mexican translator with us too. So I think that helped a little bit. If you can get Mexican translators, that helps a lot. And so we began talking to her, and so we kind of had to go through 2 translators. One was the American translator, fluent in English and pretty good in Spanish. The other was from Monterrey, fluent in Spanish and pretty good in English. And this woman spoke like kind of interior Mexico Spanish, which I don't know if you call it different dialect or not, but using much more simple words than someone that's a little bit educated. And so my translator couldn't even quite respond to her, but in order to get some concepts through to our Mexican translator, we had to go through the English translator. So it was pretty awkward, and it took some time, but she was very patient. And she was there, and she was listening. And so we went through like our typical routine, and at the end said, would you like us to pray for you? And we can do that here, or we can do that on our own sometime. And so she started walking our house, and it's like, okay, I guess we'll go to the church and pray for her, by ourselves. And she was inviting us into her house. So we went into her living room and prayed with her, asked her how we could pray with her, and then prayed like she wanted to pray to receive Christ. Thank God for what He has done for us through Jesus. And it was very emotional. She was breaking down crying, and when we said amen, we kind of looked at each other. It's like, now what do we do? And so I was like, well, maybe she'd like to eat. So we went out and went to a restaurant that she liked, and it had closed. So apparently she'd not been to this place that she'd like. It was probably like $1.50, $2 US to get a meal there, but it had closed down. So there was a place I'd found while I was prayer walking earlier, brought her there, and had an amazing afternoon, spent 2 hours with her. And I didn't really understand what was going on, but that's okay. To her, it was very significant that I was there. But no one in that whole church went to talk to the next door neighbor, even to say, hola, Dios la bendiga. Another church, Buen Samaritano, the Good Samaritan. And there was a neighbor across the street, and again, there had been groups that summer, and she'd been there before. For the past summer, there had been groups, and so, but no one had talked with her. And so as we went out on the street, we brought the pastor out on the street. He was not comfortable knocking on doors and doing this. A very loving guy, a very personable guy, but this was out of his comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
So his wife was well versed in this, so she kind of helped prep him. And the missionary we worked with was with him, helping coach him. They went across the street. This woman, you know, right across the street, had seen all the activity, had no idea what was going on, even though our kids went to VBS. A lot of times the parents of the kids that go to VBS, they really don't have a clue what their kids are doing. They're just like, oh good, you know, it's something for our kids to do. So connecting with the adults as much as possible is really nice. You can follow these kids home in the evening, talk to their parents. It's huge, because now you're connecting with the family and connecting that family with the church, and that's a long-lasting impact.
Great idea.
Yeah, and so, but this woman, they talked to her for an hour and asked how they could pray for her, when she wanted prayer for her son. And so she and her son, after we were done, they came over. So the pastor and the missionary came back to the church. So it gave her an opportunity not to come, and that's what we were fully expecting, is she's not going to show up. She came across the street with her son. The local leadership there prayed over him. I stood more at the perimeter and was praying, but didn't get into that inner circle, because it was important that the locals did the prayer. And there's obviously a kid who had never been prayed for before. He was a little bit shaken by it. And then we started talking to the mom, and the kid ran off, and we're like, he probably ran home, he's freaked out. And then come to find out, he was playing with the pastor's kids in like their fellowship hall. And then the mom went over, had coffee with the pastor's wife and some of the other women of the church, and it was beautiful. And but there were churches there all summer long, and no one had stepped across the street.